Well, there's actually a couple things here. First off, just because the jury comes back, if he does come back with a guilty verdict, it will be appealed. It'll be appealed pretty quickly. It'll move up the chain pretty quickly to the Supreme Court because it's a state trying to prosecute on what would be a federal crime. And by the way, the federal agencies, Federal Election Commission, FEC, who would normally prosecute a crime like this or present it for prosecution, said it wasn't a crime. They didn't find evidence of crime. So that's going to be part of the appeal, but it's going to find its way to the
So
Supreme
is
Court
this
very
is
quickly.
it is this are they just trying to give Mr. T a black eye? Is that what this is all about? Just make him look bad?
Yeah, they want to sully him in any way they can. That's been the modus operandi for the New York Southern District, New York courts all the way along. But the other thing you have to remember is this, uh, just because they would come back with a guilty verdict, that's only part of what transpires. Then they would set a date for sentencing. And of course, to drag this out as long as they could, they were going to try and drag out the trial itself longer. But there was all sorts of nipping dogs coming at them based on the fact that this is a state trying to prosecute a federal crime. There's inquiries going in towards the judge, the prosecutor. They needed to move this along. If they'd had their way, you wouldn't have had a verdict in this until sometime in July. So the judge will set a sentencing date, and probably could be sometime out there towards August, about around the time of the convention, when the Republicans, put their nominee for the president forward. When that happens, it distracts this news story, and Trump can't. That's part of the question: can he be on the ballot as a convicted felon? And is this a valid conviction, if you will? All of that's going to play out and distract during all this time. Now, the game plan has been all the way along that by sullying Trump, you get a conviction somewhere, you get some kind of a drama that takes him off the ballot, like what they tried to do out in Colorado. That went to the Supreme Court. And the Trump team got an education, the Trump legal team, because they didn't get one thing correct in the appeal to the Supreme Court. It was people in the amicus briefs led by Trennis Evans, right there out of Texas, a good friend who got it all right, all three things that the Supreme Court found. And not even one liberal justice could side with the Colorado courts to say that Trump could be taken off the ballots in Colorado. And so this is kind of a similar situation. Well, the Supreme Court nipped this whole thing in the bud once it gets presented to you. The Supreme Court can't step in until this reaches in some kind of a legal setting, a filing that then addresses whether or not this case is even a valid case. And I suspect that no matter what, whether the Trump team gets it right this time or not, there's lots of areas of law that apply here. There will be plenty of people with the amicus briefs also filing that will once again put Supreme Court in the right frame of mind to decide how to address this case. I don't think it stands at all. In fact,
So this is like a dog and pony show. They're just trying to make him look bad. They know this is basically not really going to go anywhere.
Well, the justice system is a captured operation through much of the states. We're finding this in numerous cases. I've got something that we're going to be talking about hopefully in the next week or two, but it could be a month or more, where we're dealing with issues within a state. And we're seeing this all around the country. The state courts are completely out of their minds in many ways. The judgments coming down, we've had some success in federal courts getting states to toe the line and start to nip some of this insanity in the bud. But we have had reasonably good success with the Supreme Court as some of these cases have reached the Supreme Court. Problem is, the Supreme Court only hears a portion of the cases, a very tiny percentage of the cases. And so there's, fights on which of the
Yeah,
cases
but
that
this
are
this is a
most
pretty
critical.
this is a big one. I
Right.
mean,
And
I
so
would
this is one
imagine
of the
they would
ones
put
that,
this as a priority.
yes, they will. It'll move to the top of the stack. It relates to an election. And so it will move, just like the Colorado case, from the point where Colorado said that Trump could be taken off the ballot. All the courts in Colorado, yeah, they were unanimous. And it rapidly went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court nipped it in the bud, said 9-0. You cannot take Trump off the ballot uh, in this federal election. Um, I think we'll see the same thing here. They'll push too hard. And then the other thing is the repercussions. The judge and the prosecutor in this case, they're all in. They can't back off at this point in time, because when they're done with this case, the things that they've done to get here are all going to be scrutinized. And all of the cases that have been brought against President Trump uh, have been malicious. They, the players have all sorts of problems of their own that are then brought to the light. All the players going after Trump thus far are facing um, personal legal struggles moving forward. A handful of the courts have backed off, for example, on the documents case where the seizure at Mar-a-Lago happened. The judge said, "Hey, we're not doing this right now. We're delaying till after the election." He didn't want to get involved in the mischief that's afoot. But and we'll see that
You,
probably some other things.
let me ask you this: do you see them still playing Democrat musical chairs, or are they sticking with Biden?
Well, again, what I've said in the past, they're handcuffed to Biden. Once they missed their opportunity year and a half ago to take out Biden and move Nancy Pelosi up to the presidency while she was Speaker of the House, and that was the plan between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Once they missed that opportunity, a method for legal succession that would have put others into striking range of the presidency that could come in as a VP under Nancy and be available, that all went away on them. And so the mechanisms to get somebody into the presidency to replace Biden, for the most part, just aren't there. There is a
So
bizarre
because
way of
I heard
thinking.
that maybe convention he steps down, maneuvers Newsom in there. So you're saying that's probably highly unlikely, correct?
Well, as the nominee, but he wouldn't be president. And if he was to maneuver in as the nominee, and there's all sorts of mischief in there that happens at conventions. About the time you think you know what they're limited to and can and can't do, they pull some rule from outer space that's 200 years old, and suddenly it's all possible. The reality is that a second Biden term is some kind of a nightmare for Democrats, um, because the puppeteering strings are
Yeah.
just becoming more and more visible, and the legal issues related to the uh, sex problems within his history, the uh, philandering,
With Hunter, correct?
well, but also his own.
Oh boy,
So
is that
there's
coming
all
down
sorts of
the
issues.
pipeline?
Well, it's in there. I mean, everybody sees it
Yeah.
with the aggressive behavior, and so will it be a factor in what's coming? I think there's other things that'll be more of a factor. We have all sorts of real threats that are becoming more apparent by the hour to the
Yeah.
country. Uh, just a side thing, and I'll be very, very not specific because we're on fluff tube, but you have the military colonel out in North Carolina. Everybody should go look at that story where he had to shoot a person on his property. Now, the thing you have to picture in that is that the men that were there had no ID on them who was in the car. The person that was shot and killed supposedly worked for a utility company, but didn't have any utility tools. His phone, he was taking pictures of the colonel's kids,
Jeez.
uh, and on his property. And then the person who was with him uh, didn't, he stayed in the car. He was handling the getaway car, if you will. They work for a utility company. When you call the number for this utility company, nobody answers. Imagine a utility company that nobody answers the phone, a public utility. There's all sorts of strangeness that everybody should go kind of look closer at that story. We've had some of our special operators. A lot of times, and I'm not saying in this particular case it perfectly applies, but a lot of times we have people that work for different government agencies, State Department, or they have military rank association, but they're actually doing something slightly different.
Yeah.
And that gives them a certain amount of cover for being places that they're at. When somebody shows up on one of these people's property or going through personal stuff and accounts and like that, we slow down and pay extra attention. There's
Yes.
flags if somebody wants to go look at their tax records or the state records, property, and things like that. And classically, we've paid attention when foreigners are doing it. The two guys that were there at the property who were working for the utility company are both illegally in the United States and supposedly out of Chicago. What are they doing in North Carolina?
Jeez.
There's all sorts of bizarreness there. So part of the problem is, are we being mapped and tracked in some of our more, you know, out through the ranks, if you will, of people that might be needed in a national emergency? Why take pictures of their kids? You're going to threaten their family? You're going to threaten some guy's
You
family?
mean when this goes military?
Yeah. So
Or
who
they're
we have
so
to
the
worry?
people that are going to abide by the Constitution and they know that are on Mr. T's side basically are they're threatening them. They're finding out who
Well,
these
and
people are.
yeah, and then you go back through the ranks. I'll tell you that we've had situations where the judges and prosecutors have been threatened, where they were handling cases involving foreign personalities. We've had cases where we're looking at one right now involving assessors' offices and property prices, and loan stuff and all that, where people involved in government offices were being threatened to make sure that things went smoothly, so that these outrageous loan numbers could be done, and children and the families targeted. It's very bizarre. So we
Yeah, there's a
have
lot of
to
wacky
be
stuff going
aware.
on.
Yeah, we have to be aware that this we won World War III. We did it several fronts, but banking being the currency, I should say, more precisely, with the Soviet Union. We're in World War IV right now, and there will be a World War V. But this World War IV is not being fought fully conventionally. Only portions of it in some places are being fought conventionally. And we're already in a wartime setting here in the United States. And people need to kind of think about that. You're in occupied territory. You'll remember that at one of the rallies, the stars were blacked out on the flag, meaning you're on occupied ground, operate accordingly. Um, a lot of the look, your audience knows as well as anybody. They were accused of, pushing around all sorts of stories. I won't even use the words that you would normally hear that were just, we had a theoretical idea of what could be going on. All of that now is becoming more and more understood to be fact. And even the people that may have ridiculed or trashed uh, uh, the folks in this audience over what they thought or believed, even 6 months ago, are slowly but steadily fading away into the background because it's becoming more broadly understood every day the type of a fight that we're in. I'm here in Hong Kong, and the people here go out of their way when you talk to them privately to make sure that you understand they're the island that was still connected to the free world, and that they have a connection into China. My passport is stamped as China, but they go to great lengths here to try to make sure that everybody knows they're here under protest. They're,
Wow.
the island was under a treaty and had to be returned to China a
Well,
couple decades ago.
on that
Yeah.
note, what do you think's going to happen with Taiwan? And I mean, China's kind of encircled it right now. They're looking. Do you think there's going to be a silent surrender? Because I heard
Well,
that China and Taiwan are going into negotiations. There's some delegates from America that are now there. I mean, what's going on with that?
imagine would any delegates from America right now be of much use to Taiwan that wants to maintain its independence? Probably not with this particular crowd. What they're hoping is to buy time enough to get to the election, and that the outcome is one that will favor them staying independent and getting some backup.
So
Um,
they're hoping for Mr. T.
they're hoping and praying and living, moment to moment. It's a very,
So
very
why wouldn't China
precarious situation.
and why won't they attack right now? I mean, I would if I
Well,
was China. I wouldn't even take that risk.
no, they want everything intact, including the people. You have a lot of resources there. They're not fully ready for the kind of global ostracism that could come. That said, for weeks and weeks and weeks, they would take 100 fighter jets, leave China sometimes a couple times a day at Mach speed, full blast, heading right at Taiwan as though they're coming to do an attack right then and there. And at the last moments, divert and go around Taiwan. Um, it would be like living perpetually. I love the comedian, comic strip person, Larson. Larson had one of the greatest comic strips that he ever did. Was a frame where he has a fish in, you see it in his tank and it's swimming away, but his eyes are bugging out. It's all stressed out. You can tell the fish is under great stress. And then when you back off on the frame, you see that there's somebody with their finger right over the button on a blender for puree, and the fish is living in a blender, with somebody's finger right there ready to hit the puree button. That's Taiwan. Any given moment, could they
Yeah.
actually withstand an assault from China if China really wanted to go at it? Not even a prayer. The sheer numbers of troops and boats and planes and everything they could throw in there. So it's just world pressure. China doesn't necessarily want to go that route and wants to force the politicians to agree to, a certain plan. Use that same analogy coming back to the States. The people that are all through the population in America right now from all over the planet, but aren't actually American citizens, or even if they have become, in many cases, that's just a ruse because they are not good for what we believe. They're there for a purpose to take America off point. We're in a type of war. They would love us to do a civil war. We're really in a revolutionary war. And the fight that we're in is the fight that goes back to the beginning of America, which is the people wanting us to be part of a global operation, come hell or high water, run by people outside of the country. It really is uh, the Brits and the Chinese Empire. And the Chinese Empire is actually an extension of the British Empire, whether people want to understand that or not. That at the end of the day is actually what's really going on.
Well, Nico,
And
I keep telling people that, this, even if there's no way Trump can get in conventionally, correct? I mean, we're not looking for him to be elected into office. This is all a show, right? I mean, we all know what direction this is going, correct? Either both sides know this is not going to an election, correct?
well, it certainly is arguable. I've made my case for the fact that we are not going to have the election on time in 2024. And we'll see how right I am or not. I'm pretty comfortable with that. And I've said it for quite a long time, even in very rarefied air circumstances. And more and more people in the right places are in agreement. The reason is because of work that's coming out. Even right now, people have, you have to really kind of be watching for it. But we have numerous cases coming forward right now being filed where issues related to election matters in 2022, but especially 2020, are now ripening. And some more arrests happened just the other day and a filing. Those details, those facts are going to become unarguable, in my opinion, by sometime in late August, first week of September, really at the very latest, to where people are going to commonly understand that first off, the mischief and frauds in the 2020 election could not have had the election come out the way that it did. But more importantly, even than that, that nothing has been changed tangibly inside the systems across the country. That if you were to hold the election, this year on time, that you would get a similar outcome because the systems of fraud are so extensive, so complete, and so completely unaltered that the mischief would just continue, and we can't allow it to go forward.
What about Biden? He's not going to be on the Ohio ballot. Have you heard of this?
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's all over the news. I mean,
yeah, I'm a few hours out of the news cycle. I was on the phone with attorneys all morning on some of the
it's
matters.
out there. I mean, they're saying that he won't be on the Ohio ballot. It's too late. Or I don't even know what to believe anymore. There's so much garbage coming out, but I know one thing. I don't see this going to an election, and I see Trump coming in eventually. Through all the talks I've had with you, I feel like I'm pretty confident with saying that. And wanting to, even if he got in fairly, let's say he got in fair and square to the election, he still would not be able to do what he wanted to do without facing lawfare and being stopped at every turn he makes. He has to come in and be able to just clean house. And I see that,
Well, in fact, he
the only way he
himself
can
has
do
said
that,
that.
well, the only way he can do that is unconventionally.
Well, he himself has said that when he comes in the first day, he'll come in as king, and he will just do the various things that have to be done. That's why so many of the powers that be are afraid, because they know that he'll have that authority, and they'll be
But he
in
can't
the
do it if
side.
he's elected properly, correct?
Well, hold on a second. He's been elected properly.
Right.
He
Okay. No.
can't
Okay. I
do it
understand that.
under in the current situation.
Right.
The legalities, the various things in play, wouldn't allow him to just sweep the deck, chessboard, whatever. Um, uh, consent to the governed. Remember, the people have to actually be in step with what he does in office and other government agencies. What they're really afraid of right now um, is George Bush said it at one point. He said, if a senior, if the American people actually knew what we were doing, they'd string us all up. Okay. Uh, they'd come after us with knives and pitchforks. Um, and they laugh about it because why? Because the American people don't know what they're doing. And these hidden cabals, these back channel deal makers, secret handshake clubs. That's what's still coming forward even now. And while you're getting lots of the threads moving into the mainstream, they haven't come together coherently yet. Coherence is a very important word. You have to have a certain amount of coherency between all the various actions, activities, etc. That's why I even mentioned the North Carolina thing. That's another data point. But as you start stringing them together and you start stepping back and looking at the picture, it's like some of the Garcia art. I remember I was looking at a tie in a store I thought was a pretty nice tie. And the person was with me says, "Are you going to really wear that? Are you kidding me?" I was just looking at the tie. I never even looked who made the tie. And this person was with me, starts pointing out, no, see the hidden picture in it? I couldn't see it. And I had to look at it. And I was like, oh, shit. There was a
What
hidden
was it?
picture right there. And it was, I can't remember, it was some foul thing. And so at the end of the day, they'd hide these things right there in the art. There's stuff that right now, you or I, people in this audience have seen it. They've seen it clearly, but it's not seen clearly yet by the numbers that we need. But the other side of the coin is once they do see it, you can't unsee it. So
Yeah.
once I started to look that way at the ties that they had there on display, every one of them, you had to look a second or two, but you knew you were looking for the hidden thing, not the obvious. And pretty quickly it'd stamp out and jump out and be like, oh, yeah, okay, I see that. I see that. I see that. And that's what's happening in our society right now. People they're seeing things where they didn't see it before. The connections and a lot of it has gotten to the worst of it. Do I think that this guy would have pulled his gun and point blank shot this guy on his property in North Carolina if he was just looking at his phone line connection on the house or the water meter or something like that? No, but the guy was photographing and had on his phone, which was not a normal phone from a normal U.S. carrier, by the way. Uh, he was taking pictures of this guy's kids. That was a bridge too far. Okay. There's a moment where that was a threat, preparation to deal a threat, that this guy, it triggered something um, in him that was more primal. I
Yeah.
think that the American people are on the verge of some type of triggering like this. What the big question is, will these globalista monsters prevail in getting Americans to fight other Americans? Or will this trigger something else in the American people where they come together recognizing the outsider nature of this threat and the invasive nature of the threat into some of these government entities that are captured really operations and realize that this is not uh, we're not going to fight each other. What I've said numerous times is that we don't want civil war. That's why certain things that have happened had to happen the way they did, because people not recognizing the origins of the mischief against them would just lash out, in some indiscriminate way, and we'd be taking on each other. Had things happened the way these would-be foreign masters had dreamed,
you're talking about the insurrection.
well, if on a lot of levels, that this moment in time had Hillary won and things gone according to plan, today, right now, coming into this election, we would be preparing for a vote all done on cell phones, totally electronic and remote. We would still be wearing face coverings. We would have already lost something arguably around 1/3 of our population. We would be coming into this, and we'd have had a nuke on U.S. soil. We'd have had more than one attack, starting with the one on Wilshire Boulevard at the Guatemalan Cultural Center. And that would have been both a biological and a radiological. Had they achieved what they wanted to achieve, we would be so disoriented. It's like an explosive going off and you're nearby. You can have all sorts of body armor and everything else on, but if it caught you by surprise and you didn't have proper ear protection, or even with ear protection, the concussive wave hitting your head, you see these guys in the movies where they do that chop to the back of the neck to a guy, and they conk out. I remember my sensei teaching me that it only takes 3 pounds of pressure at the base of the skull, if you hit properly, to knock a guy out, disorient them, and they're out of the fight for a couple of minutes. It's very hard to get your bearings. So if you're in a room and you have a concussive blast, even if you're watching for it, prepared for it, it's very hard to get your wits about you and then engage in a fight where you're actually defending yourself.
You don't have to tell me about that.
Well, and the referees, when a person is flailing away but they're not able to coherently defend themselves against the attack, that's when the referee stops the fight. America is, if they had their way, we would have been knocked so far off balance and so disoriented that we would not be able to make coherent actions to defend ourselves as a people.
The fact that we're still in the fight means, to me, is we're winning. The fact that we're in this fight right now and those things did not happen, to me, that's huge, Juanito.
I agree with you. I mean, we're still dangerous. And that is that's something that they didn't count on. They've got backups for the backups for the backups. The question is,
they're probably wondering, how the hell are we still here?
That's exactly right. And I would say too,
I mean, seriously,
that's a grace of God thing. And a lot of people, think of all the people behind the scenes who had to swallow hard, bite down to not do certain things that they desperately wanted to do. But when you game it out, and it's been gamed out, ultimately it's a losing move. You can't take that next shot to see the whites of their eyes.
So everything that's happening right now has been gamed out thousands upon thousands of times.
Yeah, it really has. And with the idea, the overriding premise was, you have to save the people. See, Lord Acton, who, he's most famous for saying, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. But he had another saying. He said, this fight from a divine perspective, and he was a believer, he's an incredible person. In fact, we have a Lord Acton Institute. Father Sirico founded it up in Michigan, and I was a pretty substantial supporter of them for quite a few years. Did important work. The Lord Acton said, the fight is about the individual. Individuals last forever because you, as an individual, and every person in this audience are an eternal being. Now, the problem is, where do you spend eternity? But
Yeah.
it is about each individual. That's the fight is that precise between us and the devil himself. But the individuals last forever. The institutions of government, the mechanisms of business, all of those are but for a moment in time, and they'll be gone.
They're just ideas
Um,
that the people uphold.
they are fabrications of the imagination. They're um, contracts and things that you come back 100 years from now, 99% of the corporations and governments that we know and understand are gone. You come back 1,000 years from now, and there are lines in the history book. You come back 10,000 years from now, which is a, a breath in the long march of time, and nobody remembers them at all in the most remote way, practically. Of of it's about the individual. Everything in this world is about the individual. And so these governments, these institutions, these agreements, they're merely fabrication um, to, allow us to go to work together, but they're not living entities. They'd like to be, but they're not. The devils themselves would like them to be permanent, but they're not.
Juanito, Juanito, what do you have in your hand right there?
Well, it's one of the coins.
I
I
figured.
had it in my pocket. I pulled it out. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna.
This one's the Melania one. That's a fun one.
It's late here, so I'm gonna
Uh,
go ahead and close out. I don't, Juanito. We covered so much stuff. I have a feeling this won't make fluff too. I know you're gonna be pissed about it, but I just want to be honest with you. We covered everything from. I mean, it's a lot of stuff, man. Do you think
well,
tomorrow we can
one
do?
thing I'd love
Can
to
we do
do.
one for
You know what I'd
YouTube
love to
tomorrow?
do? Yeah, you know what I'd love to do is right across the street from uh, my hotel here is the Chinese Space Museum.
Oh,
And
let's
so it'd
do
be
one
fun
from
to
there.
go through the Space Museum and do it from there. And we can compare their lying ideas with the ones that we get in the States, and
Let's do that.
see how
That
much
could be
collusion there is.
that could be YouTube
Yeah,
worthy.
yeah, that'd be a lot of
No, we got to
fun.
keep it
So
G rated. But Juanito, I just want
I
to say
try
thank
my
you,
best,
folks.
bro. I try my best. I mean,
I know, but it's hard, man. I know, but if my audience loves you, I appreciate you, Juanito. You're awesome, folks. Go to thejennifermac.com. Get a. Ooh, can I check out that? You want to show it to the camera real quick, Juanito?
oh yeah, yeah. It's I don't know if you can see it very well. That's
That's pretty cool.
yeah. This is let's see. There you go.
Yeah,
Melania in the dress.
that's awesome.
That's pretty important. So the last communication from the admiral of the fleet before we sailed into the dark of night and the storm, and it's the message from my book. Election 2020 will equal mega cubed, mega to the third power over the corn. The corn being all these creations of the intelligence agencies. That's who we're really fighting, even here in the U.S. So it's fun. It's fun. Page 71 of the book tells the story there.
Thanks,
Love you, Nino.
Juanito.
Appreciate everybody there in the audience, and we're going to get through this. It's a near-death experience for America, but you in this audience know that um, you see things differently, and while it is frustrating, and we're sweating bullets, we also have an understanding that there's a divine hand on this, and though the devil and all of his minions show up, they will not prevail. It's not happening.
Thank you, Juanito.
So, love all you pilgrims. Stick around. Show's going to be great.